But my top story tonight. Today is the day when the Republic was given a constitution, a document that many believe transformed this country. It's an important day, therefore, in India's history, and the nation celebrated the 76th Constitution Day. But it also should come with some introspection. Is the Constitution in danger, as the opposition parties suggest, or does it still remain a strong and thriving protector of our democracy? That's the question I'm going to raise with some of the country's top legal minds today. But first, to remind you that our political leadership sparked off a debate on this occasion. While a special event was held at the Central Hall of Savidhan, Sadan, attended by the President, Vice President, Prime Minister and Leader of Opposition and MPs, President Draupadi Murmu claimed the Constitution helps India move away from a colonial mindset and embrace a nationalistic approach. Prime Minister Narendra Modi, in an open letter, also paid tribute to the Constitution, saying it enabled a person like him to serve for 24 continuous years. But the opposition, on the other hand, has also hit out. Leader of the opposition, Rahul Gandhi, took a pledge once again to protect and shield the Constitution from what he said was an assault it was facing. He urged everyone to take a pledge not to allow any kind of attack on the Constitution. So the big question I want to raise, Savidhan khatre mein hai, or is the Constitution a true protector of our democracy? My first guest joining me now is Abhishek Manu Singhvi, fourth-time sitting MP of the Congress, but also himself a senior lawyer and someone who has studied the Constitution over the years. Appreciate your joining us, Dr. Singhvi. Is it an exaggeration on this special day to say, as your leader Rahul Gandhi said, ki Savidhan khatre mein hai? Is that not fear-mongering? You're on mute, sir. You're on mute, Dr. Singhvi.
There are no binaries in such debates. You know, we frame it black and white, never. Constitution undoubtedly is our protector. Constitution undoubtedly is a fantastic concept, commitment, idea. And I have a personal, remembrance about it because my father drafted the charter for the Law Day, which has now become the Constitution Day rightly. After almost 30 years, it was celebrated across the country in the Supreme Court and the High Courts as Law Day. And he had hand-drafted that charter. But ultimately, we have to, nobody who's debating today is entirely wrong or right. Nobody is saying that it's a binary of black and white. But we certainly have huge areas, humongous areas of operational improvement. It's a constitution.
No, give me one example. Let's be. It's not me who struck the binary. It's the politicians who have. Give me two or three areas where you specifically believe that Constitution is in danger.
I'll give you more than one, but only one sentence before that. We, as Ambedkar said, a constitution by itself is neither good or bad. It is man who is vile. How you operate it and the institutions, man or woman by person. So let me come to my examples. There are, Rajdeep, institutional pillars of Indian democracy, and there are non-institutional pillars of Indian democracy. Non-institutional are sometimes more important. Secularism, a very little known word of our fraternity, federalism. Now you put your hand on your heart and tell me, the much abused word secularism, the much misunderstood word by any reckoning, can it not be said that large parts of it, large facets of it are endangered daily in our lives? That's one. Fraternity, which is the antithesis of divisiveness, of doubt and suspicion on brother against brother, is a very closely linked concept to secularism. That also is in everyday incidents we find endangered. And so also I would say, with all the nice rhetoric about cooperative federalism, competitive federalism, actually federalism from the governors to the, the fiscal transfers to the nature of the actions of sometimes governors, supari agents of the center, etc. All three non-institutional pillars are clearly endangered. Let's come to the institutional pillars. There are very many, from Parliament, Election Commission, Judiciary, CAG, the investigative agencies, and so many more. Now, again, we don't have time to go into individual examples, but can you really say that in the last many, many years, there has not been a diminution of several institutions? Why? Because you have a overriding sense of control freakism. You must control an institution, the whole object of which is not to be designed for control. It is designed to run the constitution, not for your control. That is found in investigative agencies, which are one smaller part of our constitutional scheme, but certainly Parliament. The kind of overarching divisiveness we have in Parliament, as if a majority gives you the right to, do anything you like it, however you like it. The
No,
election
so
commission has come in for a lot of question marks. And you can always have a debate that this is all wrong and the election commission is being attacked. But
it is,
today,
no,
the
I
attitude of
want to,
election commission
no, no.
is as a competitor in the political scene, which should never be. It's an
So you're
empire.
talking about institutional elements of the constitution and non-institutional
Yes.
elements
Yes.
that you believe are under some kind of siege or threat, some of which are basic structure features of this constitution. I'm reminded, and I'm going to ask all my guests this, Nani Palkhiwala, legendary jurist, saying, "It is my firm conviction that it is not the constitution which has failed the people, but it is our chosen representatives who have failed the constitution." So we have a first-class document which has been over the years eroded, including by your party in the 1975 emergency. Dare I remind you, all of which have led at some way to an assault on the constitution. So while you tell me about democratic rights today and institutional infirmities today, there will be those who will say those infirmities also existed when Congress governments were in power. Every government has in some way or the other assaulted the constitution.
Absolutely. Nobody can say that anybody is completely blemishless. But let me tell you, is this not whataboutery? So something happened in 1977, which may be considered a constitutional aberration. Though constitutional aberration is an oxymoron, but let's take that. Does it have any charter or license for what you do today? What kind of whataboutery is this? Why should you take you back to then? We are concerned with here and now. We are concerned at least with 2014 to 25, a clear decade. Is it an answer to say that something wrong happened then? Of course, wrongs must have happened. But today, I have no hesitation in saying that the degree also, that is, one is that argument of whataboutery, the other is the degree. The degree, the consistent degree, the invariable degree, the unvarying degree of several of these institutions, starting from the non-institutional pillars of fraternity and secularism and federalism, has been
No, but should they not
consistently
be,
eroding.
sir, with due regard, should they not be protected
Yes.
by the profession which you are a part of, the judiciary?
What
If
do you
there
think
are
we
these
do every day?
transgressions taking place of the constitution, if there's a violation of the fundamental rights of the individual, I would have presumed that is where the Supreme Court is supposed to step in. Has
What
it
do you-
done
what
what
do
it
you-
should do?
What do you think we do every day, Rajdeep? The court does it and we do it as lawyers. But there is an important point to be remembered. Adjudication through courts is individuated. It is not the class mass for the whole nation as a whole. So you have a problem, you go to court, there's a notice, there's a reply, there's a rejoinder, and maybe you get relief, maybe you don't get relief. That is not a satisfactory way to turn to the court saying, why are you not the balm for all our ills?
No, the courts
Governance
have, sir,
cannot fall
I'm
down.
sorry, sir, the courts are, my argument is the courts have not done enough to protect the fundamental rights of citizens. When Article 370 was abrogated and many Kashmiris spent years in jail, what happened to habeas corpus petitions? They were kept pending for years. What happens
would
to
not-
the whole doctrine of bail, not jail? So let's be honest. We can blame Parliament and the government in power, but what about the institutions that run this country, including the judiciary or indeed the media?
So the answer, the honest answer, Rajdeep, is that you are only very partially right. I disagree to about 67 to 70% with your remark, but yes, you are right to 30-odd% because the courts
What am
are
I right about?
ultimately, you are right about the fact that the courts may not have stood us in good stead in every case, maybe 25, 30%, but if we did not have the bulwark of the judiciary, the whatever protection you have against erosion of these pillars, institutional non, would be rampant. Today, if there is a protection, maybe lesser than it should be. You are right. Individual judges give us summons and give the right judgments on bail, not jail. Individual aberrations equally nullify those summons. So those are aberrations, but on the whole, the judiciary has, I would say, stood us in good stead to a very large percentage.
Is
It's the executive,
India's constitutional democracy in recession, sir? Do you believe it's in recession? Are we heading towards an electoral autocracy, or is that fear mongering? Because I hear these words mentioned by opposition leaders. We are an electoral autocracy. Democracy is in recession. Not only constitution khatre mein, secularism khatre mein, federalism khatre mein.
As I said, I hate to use binaries because all binaries are generalizations and all generalizations are untrue. But let me tell you that clearly the degree of erosion of these institutional and non-institutional values, the degree of erosion of the institutions, the degree is much higher now in the last 10 years than it has ever been. And it's been consistent. It's not
So
a
what's the solution?
temporary constitutional aberration like the emergency. It's
What's the
consistently
solution?
eroding. Well, the solution is to realize that majority is not the answer and a license to do everything. On the contrary, the constitution is created precisely for being anti-majoritarian. There'd be no need for a constitution if the majority was to prevail. Of course, the
Okay.
majority must govern, but the whole idea of creating a constitution in the first place is to be anti-majoritarian in so many areas.
So you're
Religious
making a
rights,
distinction between majority and majoritarian. Getting a parliamentary majority does not allow you to become a majoritarian government.
absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely,
Okay,
absolutely.
let me leave it there. Dr. Singhvi, as always, I appreciate your taking the time off on this very important debate. A majority government cannot lead to a majoritarian outlook to the constitution. Every individual must have equal rights. Let's then turn to the other point of view. Mahesh Jethmalani now, another senior lawyer, and of course, he's been with the BJP for years, joining me. Appreciate your joining us, Mr. Jethmalani. How do you see this debate between those who say today constitution is in danger, Savidhan khatre mein hai, and those who are saying the constitution is the sentinel of our democracy, we should celebrate our constitution?
Well, I don't think the Constitution has really ever been in danger except during that brief period during the emergency. I mean, people may have nuanced differences about st- how institutions are performing their duty, whether they're performing their duty well or not, or at all, is possibly a subject matter of debate. But the Constitution, by and large, has stood the test of time. In fact, if you ask me, Rajdeep, its very existence, instills in people the idea of popular sovereignty. So the fact that you had the people of this country, right, once overturn or overthrow a government that subverted the constitution. And secondly, that we have periodic elections every time, which by and large are fair and free. I know there's the odd carping about EVMs, which is now buried, and then about the new SIR and all that. But by and large, I think the Constitution itself has given people a sense of their own power, and that for that very reason, I think it survived the test of time.
You're saying the constitution has given people a sense of their own power. Let me challenge you on that by saying there are those who believe the institutions of our democracy, under the guise of the constitution, have been captured by whoever is in power, and particularly by all-powerful governments like the one we have now. And these captured institutions, whether they're the election commission or an enforcement directorate, all of them become subservient to those in power, and that's where the Savidhan is in danger. That's when people's rights are in danger. Do you agree or not?
Well, I don't know. If you're saying that the criticism is that that people who should be manning institutions more independently are in fact becoming more subservient, there may be an element of truth in that. There may be an element of truth in that. I suppose when you talk about subservience and capture and all that, you're really talking about the judiciary, right? You're really talking about the judiciary because the judiciary is supposed to be the umpire between compliance and transgressions
Sir,
of
it
the
is supposed,
Constitution.
sir, Mr. Jethmalani, the judiciary is supposed to be the umpire and supposed to protect our fundamental rights. But I'll tell you, yesterday I interviewed Justice Gawai, former Chief Justice who just retired, and he said firmly that this country must be run on rule of law and not on rule of bulldozer. And then I asked him, why is it then that bulldozers are still allowed to be used to demolish houses without due process? And he said that's a question you should ask to those who are meant to implement the laws, effectively passing the buck onto governments and the executive, the elected representatives who are not doing their function in implementing the laws as laid down by the Constitution, the rights, and by the Supreme Court.
But look, First of all, let me tell you, this is a aspect, perhaps, of sometimes overzealous executive action. All right, that's an aspect, but that doesn't define the Constitution. The operation of the Constitution covers a much wider canvas in this whole country, right? And essentially, what it is really a charter. It is really a charter for responsible government, right? And if government cease to be responsible, the constitution is premised on the principle that at the end of 5 years, right, if you are dissatisfied, then popular sovereignty at the polls has a right to, if there is constitutional overreach, to remove those who are guilty of that overreach.
Sir, but do we have a level playing field in what you call free and fair elections? Given the massive use of money power, the massive use or abuse of state power, the alleged misuse of agencies like the Enforcement Directorate, so you have a free and fair election and constitutional democracy in name, but is it free and fair in reality 76 years later?
I believe it's free and fair in reality. And look, there's no test. If somebody has an opinion, right, unsupported by any evidence, then one can't. There's no argument here. We are not. There cannot be a rational debate, right? It has been tried and tested, as I pointed out. First, EVMs were questioned, right? Now it's this vote theory business that's going on. But let me tell you, there's no evidence. There has never been any evidence put forward, right? I mean, file an election petition, give us instances of that. And I'm with you. I think that's a test of a democracy, a fair and free election. The litmus test is a fair and free election. But if you just carp about it all the time, right, you are actually doing a great disservice for the own democracy which you are a part of. You participate in elections and predetermined from the very outset.
Right.
You say this is a rigged result, then don't participate.
Mr. Jethmalani, let me raise another contentious issue. Are minority rights protected? Ambedkar spoke of fraternity, equality, and liberty as the centerpiece of his constitutional vision. Do you believe that today minority rights in this country are adequately protected in our constitution? Or is the fault lies with those who implement them? Because Nani Palkhiwala, I come back to it, said it's not the constitution that has failed the people, but the electorate representatives who have failed the constitution. Do you agree that on concepts like secularism, fraternity, minority rights, we have failed?
Rajdeep, he did say that, yeah, and to a large extent, yes. But Nani Palkhiwala was not talking at a time when Hindutva, right, was a predominant doctrine, right? So I don't know what he had in mind, but certainly I think he was talking more about curtailing of freedoms. He was a champion of individual liberty and so on and so forth. So I think his perspective came from there.
But sir, it's those individual liberties one fears that are still compromised. You're a lawyer, a respected senior lawyer. How even the basic principle of bail not jail, as Krishna Iyer said it out, is getting reversed. Individual liberties are being compromised. People spend years in jail without a trial, without access to a fair trial. Don't you believe all of this undermines the Constitution? Let me put it even more directly. As a senior constitutional lawyer who's appeared for the government also at times, can you firmly today put your hand on your heart, sir, and say that the soul and spirit of the Constitution as drafted by Dr. Ambedkar is perfectly safe in today's India? Put your hand on your heart.
I can put my hand on my heart and say with conviction that all democracies and all constitutional democracies in general, right, have severe imperfections, right? But that it still means that while it's an imperfect form of government, it is still the best form of government. Rajdeep, can I just ask you a counter question? I don't like to do that normally. What is a better system of government than that which we have, right? And let me tell you, if there are men who fail that constitutional system in our country, there are equally more men who do it in other countries. Actually, if you ask me today, we are a much better functioning democracy than both the UK and the US.
You're saying that we are a better democracy, constitutional democracy than the US and the UK. It's a big claim you're making. You're claiming Indian democracy is more effective than in the United Kingdom and the US. Right?
Yes, because let me tell you something. There are two things that are happening overseas, right? One is there is tampering with the judiciary to a bigger scale than here, right? Actually, the system permits it because any party in power actually has the advantage of fixing the final court, right, with their own nominees. That is U.S. Supreme Court, right? So that's one aspect. The second aspect is right that we have a more robust electoral system than anybody else.
So, Mr. Jethmalani, we may have a more robust electoral system, but I would contend we don't have enough checks and balances within that system. Whether it's the nature of our policing, whether it's the nature of our judiciary at different levels, which is accused, incidentally, of not being of having got compromised, not independent enough, whether it is the fact that the executive has become more dictatorial and authoritarian, whether it's the legislature, which many believe is reduced to a notice board, whether it's the media, which is seen by many to have been captured. Mr. Jethmalani, you tell me, where is the real pushback in our system? Where are the checks and balances that are there in the United States or possibly even in the United Kingdom?
What great checks and balances have you had in the United Kingdom? I mean, there you have in the United States, you've had a president, ex-president, who has pardoned both himself and his entire family. That's never happened. That kind of self-interested nepotism has never taken place in this country. So the judiciary there has been a party to it. They've not. Till today, I don't know whether you can sanction, whether the U.S. Judiciary can go into the question of pardoning, right? But it certainly hasn't done anything to stop this very, very blatant abuse, the most blatant abuse.
So what you're saying, Mr. Jethmalani, we have a first-rate constitution. You believe that the dangers are exaggerated, but at the same time, you do accept that we need to see stronger institutions that are more robust. Am I broadly correct?
Yes, substantially more robust. Let me add an adjective and say that yes, I go to that extent that we are still a far cry from being at least a pretty good democracy, right? Okay. We are among the top few democracies in the world today, right? Okay. And I pride myself. I pride India. Okay. I take pride in the fact that I'm an Indian, and right, I can criticize people sometimes. Of course, you're right that the police will come down at the behest of some politician and crack down on you. But those are instances, by and large, which country do you have a leader which can incessantly going on saying things like "Chaukidar chor hai," vote chori? I mean, you've not only put unproven charges or unsubstantiated charges against a top leader of this country, but you fail to come with evidence against a systemic, what you allege is a systemic abuse.
So let me ask you in conclusion very quickly. Do you really believe there's enough space in Indian democracy for true dissent?
Yes, I think there's enough space for dissent, but dissenters will always feel, right, until they come to power, that the system is not perfect.
Mahesh Jethmalani, for joining me on the show today. I appreciate you joining me. You seem to suggest that Savidhan khatre mein nahi hai, and you seem to believe, therefore, that we are still a strong and robust democracy. Free and fair elections are an intrinsic part of it. Whether they are free and fair, I leave to viewers to debate. Thank you very much, Mahesh Jethmalani. Let's move on now to the next guest on the Constitution Day debate. And our next expert constitutional voice on this special Constitutional Day is Harish Salve, former Solicitor General of the country. Appreciate your joining us here, Mr. Salve. This debate that I've ignited today, the opposition saying Savidhan khatre mein hai, the government saying this is a day to celebrate our constitutional democracy. Do you believe the Constitution has served India well over the last 7 decades and a half, or are there infirmities in the way the Constitution is actually being implemented by the executive in particular?
Rajdeep, there are two questions which shouldn't be conflated. The Constitution has served us well. The answer is an unequivocal yes. Have we served the Constitutional well at all times? Questionable.
What do you mean by we? Because I used this quote earlier of Nani Palkhiwala, the great jurist, who said, it is not, we have a first-rate constitution, but it is the people who have, in a sense, failed the constitution, or rather the elected representatives who failed the constitution.
Of course, when emergency was declared in 1975, it was not the failing of the constitution. Every constitution has provisions to deal with emergencies. Now, if we declare a phony emergency, it's we who are failing the constitution. It's not that the constitution is failing us. The constitution is meant to accommodate all kinds of thinking. You can have leftist leaning, rightist leaning, you can have different definitions of government. And it is for good reason that the framers of the Constitution didn't add controversial and ambiguous words like secular and socialist and all this in the preamble. And I'm personally always been a trenchant critic of these amendments. And I don't know whether if you read Mr. Palkhiwala's speech, he was a trenchant critic of the amendment to the preamble also. And nobody can doubt his commitment to constitutional values.
Right.
So have we served the Constitution well? I must say, we are 75. India is 75. We've changed so many. In two recent lectures, I did a little research and found out we've changed 15 prime ministers using a ballot. We've had 15 prime ministers, I think, in the last 75 years. We've changed governments. We've changed from all complexions of government. We had Congress-dominated majority governments. We had coalition governments. Now you have a BJP-dominated majority government. You've had majoritarian governments. You've had Rajiv Gandhi with, I think he had possibly the largest.
That's right.
Largest. And the Constitution accommodates all of this. And
no, but the fear, Mr. Salve, is, are we now conflating the fact that we have elections every 5 years, prime ministers across parties are elected, with the criticism that slowly but surely we are becoming an electoral autocracy where fundamental rights of the citizens get undermined, where it's no longer a level playing field when it comes to Indian democracy? Are we an elected autocracy? Do you believe that we are veering towards that? Is there a democratic recession that you see?
So, first of all, the Constitution, no Constitution in the world, unfortunately, which provides for elected government has a level playing field. Do all the people who contest elections, and there's so much talent out there which never makes it to parliament, because you don't have a level playing field. There are certain things inherent to an electoral democracy. Do you think every American has equal right to become president of America? In theory, yes. In practice, no. Do you think everybody in the United Kingdom is much smaller with a much larger number of MPs? Your cost outlay is much lesser. I have for decades been an advocate of state funding of elections. And when I say state funding of elections, you don't necessarily have to write checks. You can make common facilities available, which the Election Commission can disburse, etc., etc. That's a debate for another day. But we don't want to talk about that because everybody, when he is in government, doesn't want to create a level playing field. You realize the unevenness of the field only when you're on the wrong side of the field.
Sir, but you know, the concept of elections is only one part of the Constitution. It's about ensuring that the fundamental rights of citizens are protected. Concepts that Ambedkar put out of equality, liberty, fraternity. Do you believe those concepts are really being observed in letter and spirit by indeed the lawmakers or indeed the law of this country, the judges of this country, or are there serious lacunae there?
Well, in theory, the constitutional rights are all in place. And after the Coelho judgment, we have locked in the constitutional rights. They cannot even be amended. How are the constitutional rights to be protected? The one area where the judiciary has, in one sense, supremacy is enforcement of constitutional rights. That is why Ambedkar did something very unusual for the Indian Constitution. He expressly conferred the power of judicial review of legislation. We didn't have to invent it like the Americans did in Marbury and Madison. Our courts have a right to strike down legislation if it violates fundamental rights. That was a very important step. And two, the right to move the Supreme Court itself was made a fundamental right in Article 32. So, by which the signal of the Constitution was, where it comes to constitutionally defined fundamental rights, the judiciary is the last word. And I must say, especially post-Krishna era, the development of our fundamental rights jurisprudence is a marvel. And the world respects for what our courts have developed our system. We've read in gender justice, we've read in due process, we've read in the right to privacy, and so on and so forth. But if you find today that there is an overall feeling that the Supreme Court is failing to protect the Constitution, we need to go back and see, and there is a lot which is troubling the judiciary today. And
so what is the biggest challenge? In conclusion, what according to you is the biggest challenge in a way that will, for those who would like to see the letter and the spirit of the Constitution actually translate into concrete action on the ground?
See, first of all, I think our political system needs to be a little more responsible. If the last word on the constitutional rights has been given to the judiciary, you cannot say, I as a politician will define what is my understanding of the fundamental right. And if the Supreme Court doesn't agree with me, the system doesn't work. Today, we've reached either you're with us or you're with them kind of an attitude in public life. Either it's my truth and your truth. If you agree with me, you're a great judiciary. If you don't agree with me, you're a subservient judiciary. Now, that's not the way for approaching, at least for senior people in public life, for approaching. Yes, you can criticize a judgment saying, here are the intellectual flaws in this judgment. And we have a debate. Democracy is all about many voices. Democracy is all about debate. And the Supreme Court, least of all, should be about criticism. Least of all. Because the Supreme Court is the last word of the law. And they have to be criticized. Their judgments have to be criticized if you find them wrong. Not on a broad base saying, oh, I'm so sorry, Supreme Court has decided against me. But go to the judgment and say, this is where they've gone. I say, for example, the Supreme Court judgment, which upheld some draconian powers of the Enforcement Directorate, is a disaster. I say so, and I can give you very strong, it's a debate for another day, but I can give you strong intellectual reasons where the Supreme Court has gone wrong, not because I don't like the face of the judge, but because I say this is where the Supreme Court has gone intellectually wrong. Bail cases where Supreme Court has denied bail, I've always said, where did this drift happen from Krishna Iyer's bail, not jail? Where have we gone into jail, not bail?
So that's exactly where, you've hit the nail in the sense in that last answer. What you're calling for is at least some element of introspection amidst the celebration of Constitution Day. Am I correct?
Of course. See, I celebrate my Constitution because it calls for introspection every single day. Since you started by quoting my guru, let me tell you what he always said. He used to always say, democracy is a ceaseless endeavour. It's not a safe harbor. Democracy means debate all the time.
Very fascinatingly put there. And I think quoting Nani Palkhiwala is a nice way on this Constitution Day to remember one of our foremost jurists. And he, in a sense, sends out a message to all of us that we have to continue to be sentinels in a way to ensure that our Constitution is not abused. Yes, very quickly.
Only one thing.
Yes.
Only one last thing. There's only one time when the Constitution was seriously under threat. And that was 1975 and the court catapulted. Who saved democracy? You and me and our previous generation saved democracy. Ultimately, even the political system knew this was unsustainable in India. Till that fire of democracy burns in your heart, burns in my heart, and burns in the heart of our fellow Indians, our Constitution is safe.
Okay. Harish Salve, always a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for joining me here on the News Today. Thank you. Interesting to get three different voices without the noise. That's what we try to do now on the News Today. Okay, let me turn from a story which today is my Get Real India story. Stories that go beyond the noise of prime time. A routine practice session has turned fatal in Haryana's Rohtak, where a 16-year-old national-level basketball player was crushed to death after a ring pole collapsed on the court. This comes just 48 hours after another teen boy died on the basketball court in Haryana's Bahadurgarh. This has raised serious questions over the Haryana government's commitment to safety, maintenance, and what happened to the unspent public funds. We talk about Khelo India, but this is Get Real India. Take a look.
Death on the basketball court. 16-year-old Hardik Rathi was practicing routine moves and trying to hang from the ring when the pole broke, crushing him. The national level player was rushed to a hospital in Rohtak, but he succumbed to injuries. The accident took place in Lakhan Majra village on Wednesday morning.
मौका ही नहीं मिला उसको इधर उधर हटने का या कुछ जैसे ही हाथ पकड़ के लटका वो सीधा ऊपर हॉस्पिटल में लेके भागे थे हॉस्पिटल में लेके गए थे उसको लगभग 15 से 20 मिनट का टाइम लगा था लेकिन वहाँ पे जाने के बाद डॉक्टरों ने जवाब दे दिया.
Hardik had won medals in several national events. The basketball court where the incident took place was built on Panchayat land 15 years ago. Congress MP Dipender Singh Hooda had initiated the work by donating 20 lakh rupees. The Haryana government opened a sports nursery which produced 15 international level basketball players. In 2023, Dipender Hooda sanctioned over 18 lakh rupees from his MP funds in 2 installments, but this money remains unspent. The district sports department and the district Panchayat development department are responsible for the club's functioning. The state government has suspended a district level sports official.
नया खेल स्टेडियम नहीं बनाया एक भी 11 साल में, मगर उन जो खेल स्टेडियम है उनका भी देख रखरखाव के लिए बजट नहीं दिया गया कि पूरी तरीके से सरकार की लापरवाही और बेरुखी की वजह से हमने अपने देश का एक हीरा भाई खोया है.
भी हमने वहाँ के डिस्ट्रिक्ट स्पोर्ट्स ऑफिसर को सस्पेंड और वहाँ की जो खेल नर्सरी जिस कोच के नियंत्रण में खेल नर्सरी चल रही थी पंचायत के अंडर चल रही थी उस खेल नर्सरी को निलंबित कर दिया है. जो भी कार्रवाई होगी वो कड़ी से कड़ी कार्रवाई होगी.
A similar accident took place at Shaheed Brigadier Hoshiar Singh Stadium in Bahadurgarh on Sunday. 15-year-old Aman died after the pole collapsed on him. The 2 deaths on the basketball court within a week have stunned Rohtak. The sports department has called a meeting of all district officials on Friday to discuss maintenance of sports centres. With Kamaljit Sandhu and Surinder Singh, Bureau Report, India Today.